All right, I'm going to get started with some of the very basics of Excel. If you notice, you have these columns, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so forth, and actually they extend on over. If I were to keep rolling over down here, I'm clicking down at the bottom, you can see there's a column, get to column Z, and then there's column AA, AB, AC, AD, and so forth. When you get to the end of that, it'll start over with B. Notice you get to AY, AZ, then it's BA, BB, C, and then and so forth. It's a very, very wide sheet if you think about it, and we call this a spreadsheet. And notice there's also rows, and the rows are numbered, and I can scroll down with my mouse wheel, and you can see all the numbers over here getting bigger and bigger. Essentially, you have an unlimited number of rows and columns. There is a limit, but you'll never experience a limit to it. So you've got all these rows and columns. I'm going to zoom in. I'm holding down my control key and I'm rolling with my mouse to zoom in just to make it a little easier for you to see what's going on the screen. Remember, when you're watching the videos, though, you can always zoom in, make them full screen, and pause them as we go. So hopefully that'll make it easy for you to see what we're working with. All right, I'm doing some very basics in Excel. And one of the great things about Excel, of course, is numbers and using Excel as a calculator. It is essentially a big electronic calculator, but you can store your numbers and then work with them a little easier than you can with a regular calculator. So we've got these columns, we've got these rows, and these things, an intersection of a row and a column is called a cell, C-E-L-L. And so this is cell A2 because it's the intersection of row A and 2, column A, I should say, and row 2. These are always called columns, and these are always called rows, and you always refer to a cell with the column letter first. So this is cell C4, not 4C. So that's the very basics of where you're storing data into a spreadsheet. It's called a spreadsheet. Now, there's various tabs as well. You see on sheet 1, I can add another sheet so that I have multiple tabs or multiple sheets within my worksheet. So, or my workbook. Excel calls this a workbook because a workbook is made up of several sheets. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 100 sheets, worksheets. I generally call this a spreadsheet, and sometimes I'll call it a spreadsheet file rather than a workbook because that's the old terminology that we used to use all the time. So this is a spreadsheet in my mind, and that's how it's laid out. Now, what can we do with it? Well, we can type in numbers, we can type in words, and we always enter them into a particular cell. So let's just say we wanted to add a couple of numbers together. I can always start, I can just type a number in, like the number 12. I type it in, I press enter. I can also type in a number if I wanted the number 45. I can use any of the arrow keys, and that gets me out of this cell and enters it in as well. So we can click around and move around. If I want to edit something that's already there, I can click on that cell and I can delete it if I want to by pressing the delete key. I'm going to undo that by holding Control and Z, or we can use undo up here. So to delete something, we just click on it and press delete. Another way, I'm going to undo that. Another way we can edit what's in there is we can double click on what's in there. So when I double click, it puts me right here, and I can edit the number here as necessary. So if I have a really large number, sometimes that's helpful. And if I messed that up, let me double click here, and then I can just change that to a 7, for example. So editing within a cell, you can double click. You can also use this right here, the formula bar. So as you type in here, you can come up here and edit here. So there's basic ways of editing. You can click in the double click in the cell to edit in the cell. You can use the formula bar up here to edit. You can delete and start over to retype the cell. Those are ways of editing the cell. Now, you don't have to enter just numbers. You can also enter, words like hello, and you can click off of that or press enter, and it would enter the word hello. There's other things you can do as well. One of the great things is to enter formulas to do various mathematical calculations, and we always start a formula with the equal symbol. So I could say this cell, which is cell C4, is equal to 45 minus 34. And then notice what happens. It displays, let me escape and get out of that. It displays 11, but what's really in that cell in C4 is 45 minus 34. 45 minus 34. So what displays in the cell is not always exactly what's in the cell causing the display. So that's a formula, and notice it's up here in the formula bar. You can see what's in there. If I want to delete the formula, I can press delete. If I want to edit the formula, I can double click in here and edit it here, or I can click on the formula and go up here to the edit bar and edit it up here. Escape gets me out of that without changing it. All right, so that's how we would enter a formula. And in this case, I've got a formula, and it's 45 minus 34. Now, we can also create formulas that don't use the numbers but refer to a cell. And so instead of 45 here, I could type 45 somewhere in my worksheet and use the cell reference, refer to the cell. So in other words, instead of 45 here, I could put 45 here, right? And then down here in my formula, instead of typing 45, I could refer to cell C2. So that would be cell C2. And when I press enter, it does the same thing. I still get 11, but it's saying whatever's in cell, cell C4 is equal to whatever's in cell C2 minus the number 34. So I can put other things in here as well. I can put, for example, I can use the plus symbol, plus, and then I could say B3. I could type in B3, or another way I could, instead of typing in B3, I can point to it by clicking on it. So I'm going to click B3 here. So this is saying C4 is equal to C2 minus 34 plus B3. Let's see what the answer to that is. It's a big number because B3 is a big number. Now the great thing about this is if I change these values here and here, or either place, it'll change the value here. So if I change this to 100, when I press enter, watch what's going to happen to C4. Because C4 changed because it's dependent upon B3. If I double click on C4 now, this is kind of fun. If I double click on C4, you can see it's color coded to show you what the cell references are in the formula. So this is equal to C2. Notice C2 is blue here, and it's colored blue up here as well. Minus 34. Well, 34 is not a cell, so it's just black. Plus B3, and B3 is red, and notice it's red up here. So if I want to change any one of those, I just highlight what I want to change, and I can go click on it like over here. You'll see now that's D2, or that's A3. Quick way of editing, I can press enter. But that's how we could look, and it's very handy sometimes to see what the formula is by double clicking in that formula, and just hit escape or click off of it to get out of it. Okay, now an important term there that I used was cell reference, C-E-L-L reference. So in this case, I've got the number 34, which we sometimes call that a literal or a constant, and then I have a cell reference. In other words, I'm referring to cell A3. So A3 is a cell reference, B3 is a reference to a cell or a cell reference, but 34 is a literal or a constant. It's literally 34, or it's constant. It doesn't change unless I come in here and click on it and edit it. But these can change depending on the value that I have in that cell. So they're sometimes called variables, or I shouldn't say that here, but they're let's refer to them as cell references.